So, Secluded Grove is the latest map, but first of all, this is the first Stormgate cast I ever do, everybody. So let me put myself to the side. Do I even need this? We don't need me, I guess. All right, so TLO and Mana 2 StarCraft Legends. We got 2 different races in Stormgate at the moment. The third faction has not been revealed yet. Vanguard, which is pretty much human / Terran, and Infernals, which is demons. The humans got this little scout dog, similar to the scouts in Age of Empires. In previous iterations, these dogs could also slow. And just to pause this for a second, we got Mana playing the Infernal Demon kind of side, and TLO playing the Human Terran side of things. The demons don't have a scout early, and what we see is a super fast expansion. Do you hear sound at all? I hope so, because for me it's really quiet. So yeah, this is a little StarCraft-esque in comparison to Warcraft. You obviously don't have to creep the gold mines. It's quiet. Okay, let me see if I can boost this somehow. No, it's very quiet on my end as well. I don't think I can. It's just very quiet on the mix. So you don't have to creep the spots. That means you can just send a worker and expand. You can see Mana already built the first unit. That's the unit that looks a little bit like an abomination or an ogre. In Warcraft, you can split it to 2 very, very fast fiends that you can see here harassing the worker line. They are losing HP over time, so at some point they will be dealt with automatically. And that's a solid little harass. This is similar to the militia call. It's just a little boost for more damage and more tankiness. So obviously, scouting here now. We got 2 resources in this game. I'm still not used to the name. One is Therium, the other is Luminum or something. So basically, the left one is the gold, the green one is the lumber. Gold is used for pretty much everything. And the other one is more on the tech side of things. As you can see, this is a very expansion heavy build. No racks just yet, just the second gold mine for more resources. And now we get the racks for the first unit that's called Lancers. It is, as you can imagine, a guy with a big lance. By the way, the quality of the video is not great, and it's a lot sharper when you see it IRL. So, just to say that, it looks a little washed on the video. And then, since I do a restream of a stream, it's probably even more washed on your side of things. So here you can see the Brutes. That is the big unit that looks like an abomination. Relatively slow. Hits hard though, can be split. On tier 1, you have to do that with a click of a button. Shortly before the unit goes down, then it splits into these 2 fiends. Later on, you get an upgrade to do that automatically. These little things here can be cracked open for the second resource, that is like lumber or gas. And you crack up these pads or these rocks, you crack them up early, and then this resource spreads. So it enriches, basically. First creep camp. At the moment, these creeps are all placeholders. It's chicken by now. It's kind of, you know, there's no great animations yet. These will be replaced by some guys that look like mercenaries. I think we've seen the art of that. And as you can see, this is a vision camp. So obviously it's giving you vision for a certain amount of time. There's a little dog that scans for you. You can also destroy these dogs of your opponent to take that vision away again. But this is only one out of certain camps. There's also resource camps. There's speed camps and there's health camps. As you can see, this lasts for around about, or pretty much exactly 4 minutes. Giving you vision in the area that is indicated by the blue. So currently, we're still on 2 base. Nobody's rushing to tier 3 or anything. And TLO doing the same, cracking up these rocks. Takes a little time, but worth it later on. First little aggression. 3 broods is, or was at that time, pretty much the norm. So the standard army composition for mana for the Infernals is going to be broods. Then harass and tech into big magmadons is what they're called. Some basically like ultralisks who can sprint forward and stun and do AoE damage similar like a Tauren. And TLO will open with these lancer kind of things that we showed you and go into hedgehogs, which are basically little cars that throw rockets at you and are super freaking fast. But early little harass gets the surround immediately, trying to jump out. One fiend still caught, the other one trapped. And this is basically like a workshop kind of building where the car is coming out. You can see it's incredible fast. These rockets have a pretty big downtime though. So if they are available, and you can see this indicator on the placeholder model, if the rockets are there, damage uptime is super high, but then they have to restock on the rockets. And during that time, the damage output isn't that crazy. Nice little attack here though, takes care of one of the production facilities that are killable for sure. And to deal with these cars, with the hedgehogs, is the main problem for mana at that stage of the game, especially if they raise in numbers. They kill a lot, they're super hard to get rid of. So what you gotta do is, to tank a little bit of damage with the broods, split that brood into 2 and surround and kill with the fiends. The cars can be repaired, as pretty much every mech unit can be repaired. The human or the Terran, the Vanguard faction, can also power build, similar to Warcraft 3 humans. So, next little harass. Next expansions as well. TLO looking kind of fine. Harass is over. Mana needs some time to tech up. And defend the base. This is also supposed to be the next expansion. Pretty much killed right away. And as you can see, the Infernals got Shroud. It's this Blight kind of mechanic. If you have your units on this Blight kind of thing, it builds a shield, which is indicated as this white HP bar before the real HP bar. And you can spread this Blight by either the main building or plant towers. Not only do you have towers, you also have the meat farm, which is basically your farm that provides you HP, but that farm is also spawning these fellhogs, exactly, which is a defense unit that you can't control, but it's responding to enemy units automatically and can be eaten for this white shield kind of thing. So more and more harass and scouting going on, just a little distraction, gathering information, as you have to know what's your opponent doing, what's his state of tech, how far is he, etc. To gather information on tier 2, Vanguard can also send little scout units across the map for some energy that the main building is building up. So, more expansions, little difference here. Mana going for the expansion at a position that has Luminite or Therium, you know, the gas resource, the lumber resource, while TLO is only going for the main resource on the right-hand side. And the car harass never really stops. Before you go into, like, late game Vanguard heavy mech with atlases, etc., etc. So, another new unit, or 2 new units here for mana. You have seen them before. This is the Tauren. This thing looks like a Kodo. Does basically damage like a Tauren with pulverize, so temporarily you get a little bit of AoE. It can also storm forward and stun a little AoE section. And you get Gaunts, which is a weird unit. It's a little bit of a mix between Necromancers and Huntress. It does these glaive attacks that you know from Huntresses, and if you infest the unit, it spawns these little fiends that you've seen before, the ones that appear when a gaunt is splitting. So a little bit of a mix, super fragile, and oftentimes pretty OP if they hit biological units. So we're getting ready for late game. In this game, there's little RNG. So as you saw on this little tooltip there, the AoE damage from the Magmadon, Kodo, Torrent kind of thing is appearing at every third hit, not per chance as it is in Warcraft. So we're building more bases and securing these areas. We got a solid army already. And I'm not sure if the Hedgehog cars did a lot of damage, because Mana was just building up a big army, no real harass, it was mostly threatened at his own base. And now we got the first fights of the first map of the first show match. These towers that you can see here, do you see my cursor? Yes, you do. These towers, it's currently a buzzsaw cannon, is basically an empty tower that you can fill with several units that either do a lot of damage to melee units or are a normal tower that shoots from afar, or can heal your units or heal your mechanical units, depending on what unit you put inside. So home turf advantage now for TLO, but not too sure if he has enough. But yeah, certainly looks like it. Of course, this costs a lot of resources as you use your militia type unit in the bobs. But Mana currently full map control. The white shield is gone, but that's alright. Macroing up, getting another base done at the top, and this is just a distraction while trading and keep TLO busy. We saw the first stun right there. AoE damage was seen as well, and it feels like TLO is not necessarily ready. We saw a little stim used on the Infernal unit that makes them... It's basically like the Berserker ability in Warcraft 3, just attacks a lot faster. And if you kill some units, or if you hit the units, you infest them, and if you kill them then, they spawn these little spiderlings that you can see there, and that is of course a big snowball ability. So now, to counter this, Vulcan, Gatling gun attack that gets stronger over time, but it has to stand still for this attack to wind up. And it can dash forward, can stun, and go through trees. Pretty powerful. And pretty hard to kill, as they can later also be healed by medics. So first big attack, or bigger attack. Didn't crack the base, but secured the base at the upper side. We're building up this shield again on Shroud. So it's kind of nice to have towers across the maps. To have these little pit stops waiting for you. Base not saturated at the moment. Maybe saving it for later when the main base expires, then you can slide the workers over. And this one, big expansion in the middle. Should be heavily contested, as you can see. It's basically a double expansion. At one point you only have to build one main building there, and you can mine from all 4 spots at the same time. It is approachable from all angles, of course, and this must be scouted. Like, if you don't know that that's possible and the opponent gets it, it's basically the knockout punch, and it's so efficient. And TLO, with his army he got at the moment, can't really leave. There's a lot of lockdown thanks to the Magmadons, who are also very, very tanky, doing a lot of damage, but are very expensive. And now they're getting gunned down with more militia support. TLO, of course, the first show match champion of this game, defeating Monk, however that is possible. But yeah, Mana playing nicely around the Gaunts. They are super fast, they can reposition, baiting an attack to then stun and then focus, and deterring from the fact that there is another expansion in the north and the expansion in the middle. Now we're building up this shield again. Getting pretty hard for TLO to fight this. Nice stun, good damage, more and more fiends coming in. Trying to reposition, but it looks like Mana is just all over TLO. Gets a big pickup with the sweet surround. These Vulcans are also super expensive, and they're supposed to do more damage than they did, as they are, or were, about to drop. Now Mana retreats again onto Shroud, build the shield, you know the deal. Can TLO stabilize, I wonder, against that base in the middle? It's super hard. The entire map belongs to Mana, I guess. The thing is just, if you can crack one of the bases, then it's pretty much lights out. If TLO could have gotten another expansion or harass a bit longer, the late game should be his at that stage. But okay, there's a harass on the left-hand side. There's a big fight here. We see a Spriggan, which is the air unit. It's very easy to clutter up the entire battlefield with all the land units. So an air unit here and there. It's not that strong for harass. It's pretty sweet. It's kind of comparable to a gargoyle. But yeah, that was too much. TLO taps out. GG. Mana takes map number 1 with pretty straightforward gameplay. Distracting while expanding, claim the middle, and it's just a big economical damage. And then play the game from there. Good timing, good distraction. Key here, of course, destroying the one factory. So there was never the critical mass of hedgehogs and never the critical map control that hedgehogs usually give you to stop them. Then you should probably invest a lot more into static defense, but that costs a lot, so your army is smaller, and then you lose the game. So next map, you'll see it's probably gonna be very different. The map we've just seen was pretty straightforward. The camps were almost all ignored. You didn't see a heal camp, you didn't see a speed camp, you didn't see the resource camp used. It was very expand, expand, fight, fight. Which is a little one-dimensional, I think. And the maps could definitely be better. The other maps are, in my opinion, also better. When creep camps are more rewarding, when they are more centered on the map. This was a very macro-heavy, resource-heavy game. And other maps are different, which is already a solid sign. And these creep camps went through different iterations. In the first versions, they were super decisive. Almost to a point. I'm exaggerating here, but whoever gets the first few creep camps wins the game. Because it gave you such a big lead. That's different now. As we saw on the last map, they barely ever mattered. Now, Secluded Grove, a weird map, everybody. Because, as you can see, these bases are on one side of the map, but only very, very small units can go through that path of the map on the right-hand side. All other units have to walk all the way to the left-hand side. And there's a siege camp. You've seen the vision camp before. Siege camp is spawning a big catapult, which you can't control. It automatically moves towards the enemy base and does quite some damage there. You kind of have to accompany it so it doesn't get picked up, but once it arrives, is pretty damn powerful. So again, the first thing you basically always do is expand as fast as possible. And yeah, as I said, it's a little weird. Air units, of course, can pass through the middle. These camps, the siege camps, were a bit abusable. I'm not sure if they got fixed. Here you see a resource camp, which is kind of fun to contest over it, because whoever gets the last hit gets the resource. You get like, there we go. Whoever gets the last hit, 40 gold, I want to call it. I'm so bad with the resource, I'm sorry. And that's a nice little early game interaction that you can have. If you steal the resources of your opponent, you basically get a worker for free, and then there's an advantage for you if you hit the last hit right. Happy is gonna own in that regard, obviously. So expansion here, expansion there. We get the lances once again. We crack open the secondary resource, let it grow. And it's a standard meta build by Mana here with the 3 iron volts for the big abomination looking things. Faster expansions this time. As you know, as I told you, it takes a long time to get across the map if you have to go via the left-hand side. So you might just be safer and expand one more time before your army is ready to defend. Or you go on the offensive, as Mana is doing, again, with these little fiends who can pass through the right-hand side. You see a level indicator, by the way. That is something here at the bottom. That is something specific to the Vanguard faction. They level up their units basically the more they kill, and then they get stronger. And here we have the next expansion there as well. Wonder, while you can see the next set of fiends going through exactly this part of the map, if they're gonna go for the catapults. Not yet. The creeps at the catapults are really freaking strong, so you need a little bit more. Just constant distraction, doesn't cost that much. I think this is just Mana exploiting the movement advantage a little bit. Nice block, so body blocks obviously possible, surrounds obviously possible. And it's really hard to outmaneuver them. Lots of stutter stepping here, animation canceling kind of, to maximize the damage. And as I said, try to steal the resource camp away, but as is meta, the Hedgehog is here, saving the day. Resources go to TLO. More and more brutes across the way. We spread the shroud to have the shield generation and contest a little bit more of the map. And I wonder if TLO found more time. As you can see here, the brutes couldn't pass through that dead type of forest, so he has to split them into smaller units who then can pass. But yeah, with brutes, you are a bit superior to the lancers, and this is obviously very, very annoying. No static defense here. TLO trying to block the ramp a little bit. Sweet surround. And an easy kill, of course. If the unit is surrounded, you can't get out of it, as is the norm in Warcraft as well. And once again, just like in game 1, TLO can't really find a solution to this harass. There's another harass right there. Static defense with the workers, as with militia, is pretty good. Whoopsie. There you can see how the button was not pressed to split the brood in two. This could have been 2 more fiends, but he didn't. So here's the strength of the hedgehogs. There you saw the split. And now the rockets have to be uploaded once again. Vision camp destruction. As I told you, that little radar dog is not meant to last forever. So the vision is gone, but the resource camp is something I think I didn't mention yet. The camps are coming back. They respawn after a certain amount of time. Then they get stronger and you get a bigger reward. So more and more production buildings, of course, as you get more income. I'm not 100% sure how many bases saturate a production building, obviously dependent on what unit is coming out and how much it costs, etc. But you can expect rather, like, again, between StarCraft and Warcraft, definitely more production buildings than in Warcraft. This also changes with the balance, of course. So we got a scout dog out. These guys can slow later on, can be massed and deal a lot of damage. Oh. Okay, here's the siege camp. The big Viking chicken, not bad. But this army is occupied right now. TLO using that time to launch an attack on the left-hand side. These are the automatically controlled little units from the farm. Farm is gone. So we don't have an indicator for resource and supply. But of course this can get you supply blocked if you're not careful. Tower gone, and this attack seems pretty powerful. There's no militia functionality for the infernal workers, but they can be blown up like a bat rider basically, just on land. But you need an upgrade for that, and that is pretty far down the tech tree. So here's the catapult, obviously a placeholder. It is very strong though. And this is similar to a Dota push, I guess. There it is. Especially the AoE hits hard if you're not dodging it. So this feels unlike the game before, which was a multi-prone attack. More of a laning kind of thing. This fight, super important, but once again, feels like TLO is not ready. Everything hurt. The AoE is destroying him. And even though he did some echo damage in the north, it's gonna be real tough to hold this. Maybe with high ground. There's a little fly that you saw for a second. That is basically a bat rider that can detonate into air. But yeah, holding this push is so hard. We once again got the gargoyles who take out the backline. Magmadons doing the AoE damage up front. This little green thing is basically a spell of the Infernals. If you kill units, you get energy, and you can use 4 different spells for that. One of that is to infest everything. That's a global spell, by the way. And whatever dies when it's infested is spawning these little fiends that adds to your army. So pretty necromancer-esque, as I described before. So TLO has very little left, and the catapult is still there. Oh, there you saw the spell. The infest spell is super ridiculous, especially when it's infernal versus infernal, and both can do that. Also, this triggers when you kill a fiend. So from one fiend, you can get 2 fiends, which is, you know, a bit ridiculous. But anyway, will probably be fixed later on. But TLO holds. Use the time to expand, but of course, Mana was building up another army, gets the speed camp, and that's pretty cool, man. I would be very curious to see how this plays out in Warcraft. You stand on that camp, and your units are getting, like, charged. And you get, as the name suggests, a speed boost. So both are going for another base, then the entire north would be captured. But sweet timing for now. You see medics, or medtechs I think they're called. They can heal a lot. They basically have a spell like the priest heal, which heals a little bit very quickly. They also have a spell similar to rejuvenation, which is heavier in mana but heals a shitload. So that's a unit that we haven't seen. There's also a rifleman. Pretty cheap, can be massed. Nice little surround by mana once again. Taking out these medics is super crucial. Maneuvered himself into a corner, but there's not much surface area, I gotta say. Magmadon is coming in. That's, of course, the worst thing that can happen. Lots of AoE. You see him smashing these bio units to pieces. The Spriggans, the guard unit, they are not that tanky. But I feel like they weren't focused enough. So Mana holds the base, survives the fight, and the tug of war continues. We also got the transport ship. We saw it for a brief second. Yep, there it is. So that thing... Wait. Okay, we'll see it in a second again, I guess. This thing right here is basically a Zeppelin, a dropship kind of thing, but it has to land to pick up units, and it has to land to get these units out. But when it lands, it gives you these Shroud, Blight kind of thing, and you get armor again. Feels a little clunky at the moment. And then, of course, once it leaves, the Shroud is gone again. But it's, of course, a very nice support unit in a fight to get armor regeneration, similar to Blight in Warcraft 3 as well. Just that it's not HP, but Blight. Yo, this is a super cool setup. Really hard to break. But the damage output could be solid. The choke is certainly helping TLO with that ranged setup of Exos. We get a Weaver. It got a long tongue. This kind of thing looks really cool. Little bit of a camel fusions with a cat kind of thing. Got a huge tongue. Drags units towards you. It's very expensive though. And doesn't do that much damage. But the design is pretty damn sweet. So now that choke has been broken. There's fiends pretty much everywhere. There's also a Magmadon in the backline, which is pretty much the worst thing that could happen to you when all your workers get attacked by that big thing with AoE damage that can jump in and out. But once again, held. Question is just how good is the follow-up attack? And that is once again pulling the units towards you. Can relatively easy surround them then. But yeah, where are the reinforcements we get? New Gaunts in. Here's the infest, and all these units, if they die now, will turn into little fiends. So far, not too many of them. Still time to evacuate, and wouldn't be too surprised if this is the end of the line. Fight on two fronts. There we go. Very, very overwhelming. Magmadon, yo, this is nasty. Sprinting into the economy line. Once again an infest. And all these workers are gonna die. Kinda hard to get them back in time. And this is currently late game stages. Fights all over the place. No clear front line compared to what we've seen in the first couple of gameplay videos. And this is a flood now. This is a fiend flood. What can you do? Not much at this point. Lost a little bit of control after the first fight. On the left-hand side. And then the counter attack wasn't too strong. Gets caught by the first Magmadon, who jumped in, did the damage, and from there on out, it was game! And 2-0 for Mana, who kept TLO busy pretty much the entire time, abused the fiends early on with their movement advantage on this very map, got the camps when they were available. Mana's really freaking good at this game already. And now he will face Moon in the second show match. Feels like TLO never got to play into the strength of the Vanguard faction with the map control of the Hedgehogs. Really was a bit too distracted. Couldn't get the late game death ball out. Was pretty much just reacting, rarely acting, and when he was acting, he was caught. So yeah, that was it. Your reactions in the chat now. I will pause the video in a second and then we can discuss these a bit. This is a trailer we've seen before at the Video Game Awards. Better, definitely better. Little sad that we didn't get to see the dragon, but if you're interested in the Kickstarter, ! Stormgate for our affiliate link.
What a way to start off the competition. Congratulations, Mana, and thank you, TLO. We are gonna take a closer look at those games. We've got our Tosis on the stage, and we are joined by Kevin Dong, aka
it's Monk!
RTS Heads.
It's Monk! It's our boy!
Competitive designer.
I casted with this guy.
So, gentlemen, why don't you talk about what you saw today?
All right, we'll go into this in a second, but I want to read a bit of chat before. Maybe I can clear some misconceptions or agree with you or tell about my experience. Is the catapult a graphic placeholder? Yes, absolutely placeholder, just like the cars are placeholders. It's slower than StarCraft, faster than Warcraft, for sure. And the discussion is, do both games hate it then? Or is it the middle ground? I'm not sure yet. If one of the other races is better, I mean, balance has not been figured out in this game at all, to no degree. And I can tell you that people figure out counters pretty fast. So nothing's really settled yet. Really wish the game would be like more like Warcraft. I mean, obviously, we are a Warcraft channel here. We're watching Warcraft for 20 years. Obviously, we would like to be more than Warcraft. Same goes for me, by the way. 100% I would like this to be more like Warcraft, but it has some cool things, some things I don't like too much, but we'll see. I will have to wait to play the game myself. That's a skill that very few people have, my friend. Needs more spellcasters and arrow throwing dudes. There is a lot of abilities in the game. Not too many spells, though. That's kind of right. It's just alpha or beta. I mean, words like alpha, beta, pre-alpha, yada, yada, yada. There's no definition of what they mean, so it's just not ready for release, I guess. We haven't seen tier 2 caster units in this gameplay showcase. Oh, the Medivac flying thing. Yeah, that's right. We saw the medics, though. Black Misak, thank you very much for the 2-year sub. 2 years, home of my prime. And he never forgot about it. Sweet. And yeah, there's no tier 3 units in the game yet. So that's also a limiting factor. But maybe our boys will talk a bit about it. Artosis, I played Fall Guys with him. Monk, Kevin Dong, I casted a lot of 2 and 2 with him. Great guy. Let's see what they have to say.
I tell you, that was really impressive. More units being used than I actually anticipated for being so early in a closed beta. What did you think?
Yeah, I was really impressed by both the number of types of units that were used, but also how dynamic the games were. A lot of back and forth, especially with Mana poking in a lot with Fiends, with Brutes all over the map in both games. And on the opposite side, TLO was poking in with his Hedgehog. So a lot of players going back and forth on the map.
Yeah, I understand you have some clips for us to take a look at?
I have very carefully chosen some choice clips. So let's roll with the first clip.
Wadar Hex, thank you for the sub.
All right, in this clip we see that Mana is poking with the 3 Brutes who can have the opportunity to transform into Fiends. They split themselves and become much more, I wouldn't say powerful, but they do a lot more DPS at the cost of durability. We also see throughout this early game, he's baited a lot of Bob overcharges, which is a defensive mechanic for Vanguard. But the command post is going to run out of energy soon, which means that the workers can't really help that much at defending. So he's going to deal a good amount of damage early on. Yeah, I really like this pressure that he was doing early on here. And of course, he's only cost Luminite as well, the Brutes, so very easy to manage making these. One thing that Taste and I were talking about a lot, that mech bay going down
really seemed to affect the rest of the game.
Yeah, totally. It totally affected the pace of the game. Usually you want a lot of hedgehogs to give you map control in order to scout what your opponent is doing, in order to
Dargog, thank you for the 5 gifties.
see, oh, when are they transitioning, so they can, so that the Vanguard player can transition to units that can actually fight the huge hordes of brutes, fiends, gaunts, and later magmadons. And I think that comes into play a little later.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to mention here as well, the actual mech bay itself is probably not positioned correctly, and this is like one of the tenets of RTS games, and it's great to see that already in use this early by these StarCraft pros, right? Where that building is a little bit out of position, and that may have been what trickled down to a TLO loss this game. If that had been, for instance, where the habitat is, and the habitat was in the other spot, he may have been able to repair it, keep it alive, get more hedgehogs. Little
Habitat
things really build into big
here.
things in RTS games.
Yeah, brilliant observation.
Thank you, Jibba, for the sub.
In this particular closed beta phase, we've seen a lot of SimCitying come into play. You need to basically wall off against some of the Fiend run-bys, some of the Hedgehog run-bys. Yeah, just great development of the game that we're seeing in the various closed alphas and closed betas.
All right, well, great first clip here. Let's go ahead, jump to the next one.
All right, and here we see some of the creep camps that are being fought over. Chickens, of course, are a placeholder, but we can see that you really want to compete for these camps in order to get the resources and the benefits that come from the camps. And TLO actually stole both chickens in this clip with his very mobile hedgehogs. He's going to get the money from there. Unfortunately, he's not going to get the residual effect, which is the vision tower there. But still, he gains 75 Luminite, and he denies it from his opponent. A 150 Luminite swing.
Yeah.
That's, as I said, something that Happy will excel at. You only get the vision if you pick up this little purple orb thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And you know what I like about seeing this scene? It's almost as if, of course, your whole team, many of the people on your team have worked at Blizzard over the years, and it feels like you're finding like a sweet spot right in between StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, where we have some of these interesting interactions. It's not the end of the world that you're going to lose this creep camp, but we're having really cool fights around it.
Yeah, exactly. One of the big selling points of creep camps is we want players to go out into the middle of the map so they have these mini engagements. We can see here that both players, because they're fighting for these creep camps, they see exactly what their opponent's unit composition is, and therefore they are kind of like passively scouting each other. They're not taken aback by whatever the opponent can bring.
Yeah, and one more.
I think it's also for newer players. It's very helpful to have something neutral to fight against. It's also an indicator how to move on the map. I think creep camps, not just because of these exchanges that we see here, hold a lot of value. You get a reward. You are not forced, if you feel like in a disadvantageous position. You don't have to attack or go for a drop or something, way to dodge the next bigger fight. You can also try to get these objectives on the map in terms of creep camps, and I think every RTS should have them. That is obviously my Warcraft 3 bias, as I love creep camps, and I would love there to be more creep camps and more impactful creep camps. But it's a solid step. Thank you, Black Raymond, for the sub.
The hedgehogs, it just seems like they're very strong right now. How fast they are, how they can just kind of lock on and kill something off very quickly. But I love seeing the counterplay that Infernals have here as well with the Magmadon, right? Charging in, getting that stun, and doing a little bit of punish, because I feel like that's really important for a healthy RTS, is that you're not always taking damage. You have some counterplay.
Yeah, and on the Hedgehog side, the Hedgehogs are going to be a little slower than the Magmadon charge, but if you anticipate the charge, if you're familiar with that, then you can actually dodge the charge as well. So a lot of dynamic back and forth that we're hoping for. All
right, excellent clip here. Let's go ahead and see the next one.
All right, I think this is going to be one of the first big fights. There's going to be a push with these Gaunts, with a single Magmadon, I believe, and some Brutes. The Hedgehogs are really good at harassment, but they're not so good in straight-up fights. We really want the Vulcans, you want the Bob Overcharge, and possibly because of the early mech bay loss early on, we don't see any Vulcans, which are typically used to defend this push.
Yeah, that's true. It did feel like the Vulcans were a little bit late this game. I did feel during this, I liked the Buzzsaw Cannon because everything was basically melee-based coming up. but I felt like, oh man, maybe if he had one more, this would have been more holdable as well.
Yeah, exactly. Great mention of the use of the buzzsaw cannon. Vanguard has a defensive turret called the sentry post, and you actually can put any infantry into that sentry post, and it will transform into one of many defensive towers. The buzzsaw cannon is really good against biological units, really good at close-up fights, but unfortunately, just because one tower is not going to let you defend this huge horde of infernal units.
Yeah, and really those Vulcans, I think, were what we're missing in this one.
Yeah, and another thing to point out is, you had mentioned SimCity before. The buzzsaw cannon was actually placed in a position where a lot of the, not a lot of mobs could repair it. So another case where a building in a corner might have hurt TLO.
Absolutely. All right, another great clip. Let's go ahead and check out the next.
And I think this is one of the final fights. Mana is putting up a Shroud Stone in a forward position so that his units can regenerate health. And he's really just giving it to TLO. TLO is trying to push out, but the combination of Gaunts, Magmadons, he's really a little higher tech than TLO. But in addition to that, he's using some of his global abilities, like he's able to infest his opponent, which deals a lot of damage to the Vanguard units over time, and also whenever a Vanguard unit dies, it's actually going to make a Fiend. So Infernal, as a faction, they're all about killing their opponents, and also just sacrificing.
Isn't every faction about killing their opponents?
Sacrifice themselves into Fiends. You kill your opponent's units, and they create Fiends. And anytime any unit dies on the battlefield, you actually get a global resource called Animus, which you can use for these global abilities like this Infest ability we see here.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, I think I've only seen the Infest ability and the dragon you can spawn if you get like a lot of that resource. Infest seems by far the strongest. That's
very useful, as you can see, and of course that Infest, very popular right now to be able to get out all these Fiends. I would have loved to see if we had a Medtech with Nano Swarm at that point to help heal up the Vulcans, because the Vulcans do seem like they are a very important counter against these Fiend-heavy plays.
Exactly. Typically, this kind of composition, you'll want to be a little more Medtech heavy. You kind of saw that in the later game, but in this particular game, the Vulcans just didn't have enough survivability. They're taken out quite early by not only the Magmadon stuns, but just the DPS from the Gaunts in the backline.
Yeah, and usually you basically have a spell like Rejuvenation on these big ones, and then, of course, they survive a lot longer, they can stand still a lot longer, they do a lot more damage.
All right, a great fight there from Mana. Let's go into our next clip now.
And I think this is going to be the final closer. There's a lot of towers there. We have the buzzsaw cannon. We have the Repair-O-Matic, which is the version of the turret that has a bob in it, and then they can repair all mechanical units. So a lot of great tower use from TLO, but unfortunately, just because of the economic advantages from Mana throughout the game and the mini skirmishes, most of which Mana took, I think it just all added up, and we see a GG from TLO.
Yeah, and I do want to point out as well, we didn't quite get to point out in this game, but we did in the second. I love that he reinforced with some Spriggans, right? Because this type of composition we see from TLO doesn't really have the anti-air. That's always been a problem for like mechanical armies in RTS games. And the Spriggans were doing a great job as well helping out, even though lower in number here.
Yeah. Artosis, brother, have you never seen an army of gyros? It's the best anti-air you can get, my friend. But yeah, in general, it's not the end of the world. I think it's more about reaching into backlines as well for more mobility, usually to be able to pressure the healers.
Yeah, exactly. TLO was super focused on Lancer Vulcan. That's one of the strongest compositions you could make against this ground army. But he just didn't have any answer to the Spriggans. Usually you would want some Hedgehogs maybe, some Exos, which we saw in the next game. But yeah, the Spriggans, I actually haven't seen too much of that in the games that I've observed in the closed beta, but like a brilliant idea for Mana.
Yeah, I think it's something that'll probably...
What are your thoughts on units dying this fast compared to Warcraft? I think this is not nearly as fast as in StarCraft, so I don't hate it. In general, though, what worries me a lot and what I don't like is the amount of units. Like, it makes it so much more readable and more impactful if you have fewer units, right? Like in Warcraft, how many units are in a fight? Like 20 to 30 at max? And this, like, there's a lot of units on the screen right now, and the fight is half over. So everything is obviously cluttered, because the more units you have, the more HP bars you have, the more effects you have. And this game has a max supply of like 300. Obviously, you can scale the supply numbers of units to match that, but I think the maximum amount of units in this game is incredibly high. And I'd rather move it to the other side. But that is obviously also my Warcraft bias. But also a bit from the objective eye.
They catch on over time. But let's go ahead and check some clips from that second game.
Yeah, exactly. Anka is saying, can't imagine 3v3 with 3 times 300 supply units and that being infested. That's right. That's very right.
I love this from TLO. So the siege camps on Jagged Maw, which is this map, are one of the primary aspects of this map. If you kill this camp, you get a neutral catapult, which kind of A moves across the map and helps you fight. It's very powerful, but TLO knows this, and he actually scouted the timing of when the siege camp was being done. So not only did he know that Mana was out of position, but now he knows when he needs to defend this catapult. So he's going to attack while Mana is creeping and deal some economic damage to these imps.
Yeah, I love that move as well. You know, the fact that his scout was actually in there seeing the timing of that siege camp allows him to come up here, deal some damage, take out a Shroud Stone, you know, just be a bit of a nuisance. And of course, he has a timer in his head for that catapult coming so he can get back in a defensive position.
Exactly. And we're going to see the results of that, I think, in the next clip.
All right, let's jump into that next clip. And yeah, the catapult really showing a lot of damage here.
Yeah, so one of the strategies that you can use to defend the catapult, I think what new players do is they actually just, oh shoot, there's a catapult, let me just build up in my base. But you can actually do the catapult, it takes a long time to shoot, and it's very slow, so you can actually dodge the shots of the catapult, and you can delay it a lot while you build defenses in your base. And in that time, you can counter the catapult. So TLO, I don't think he actually necessarily wants to win this fight. Ideally, he would want to pick up the catapult, but he doesn't really have the units for that. Usually you want a lot more hedgehogs or maybe some scouts to cut the catapult off. But he's buying a ton of time for some sentry posts back home. Maybe he's going to build some Vulcans back home in order to defend these core.
Guys, this is a placeholder. Please don't freak out. It's clearly a placeholder.
Yeah, I love some of this micro as well, utilizing that Lancer upgrade where they get the speed boost when they're being attacked. You could see he could pull out just in time to really minimize damage. And most of the catapult shots hit, but when one like that hits, you really feel it.
Yeah, I think there's still maybe a bit more he could do there, but yeah, just awesome awesome thoughts from TLO. I really love the way he just microed, especially his Lancers throughout this entire series.
Yeah, very, very cool with that push. Let's go ahead and jump into our next clip here.
And this is the next clip. We saw Mana is actually reinforcing with Spriggans this time. Spriggans actually have an ability where every time they attack anything, the thing that they attack will lose both production speed and attack speed. So another good idea to reinforce is that you can actually hit turrets with the Spriggans and then delay or reduce their effectiveness, which helps you defend versus the catapult. But TLO just charges in, goes for the catapult. I think he's going to snipe off the catapult. But now, like you pointed out, he doesn't really have the anti-air.
Yeah, he was very, very Lancer heavy here, getting into medtechs and everything, but did get into exos. Another thing to mention, you know, none of the middle of the map had really been cleared out yet. So the Spriggans can fly across all the terrain and get up that army very quickly. So again, I'm really loving the Spriggan play that we've seen here from Mana.
Yeah, to be honest, like not a very common unit in the closed beta, but just brilliant use of it from Mana.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into our next clip here.
Showmatch, I think.
And right now, one thing I noticed was that TLO went really exo heavy after that push, and I wonder if he overcommitted to exos probably. And I think Mana saw that. Usually you would want mostly brutes in this army, but I think he saw, oh, you're very Lancer weak, which is or Lancer light, which is the counter to mass fiends. So he's like, oh, I actually don't want brutes here. I think Fiends would be a better solution. Yeah. So I like that as Infernals, you can really dynamically choose which unit you want to have in the battle. And he chose the correct choice. TLO, I think he was actually doing really well in the previous fight before this, but he kind of just got cornered in the back. I don't think he knew the terrain that well, and therefore he kind of lost his entire army there. But yeah, I just love the decision, the micro from TLO, and also the decision making from Mana.
Yeah, and I even liked him pulling back here. And I mean, you see the Magmadon come up and stun everything, and that's really kind of the end of it. But yeah, right. You know, these Fiends, we've seen such strong plays out of Mana. It really does feel like you need to dedicate some sort of...
We saw it here, just for a second. I feel like pathfinding is not 100% where it's supposed to be. Look at this unit right here and how it behaves when it's trying to attack something.
Plays out of Mana.
Super weird because really it's such a narrow position, of course.
Some sort of splash.
But it looks a bit jittery.
Some sort of area of effect damage to take those out.
Yes, common choices are, of course, the Vulcan, which we've seen a lot throughout this entire series. Also, the Atlas is a unit that deals a lot of damage in a very large AoE. Players haven't been opting for that as much because it takes a while to get to, but we might see it in a future match.
Yeah, hoping to see it. Let's go to our next clip now.
All right, now we see another push from Mana. This is not going to be the end necessarily, but it's going to be the beginning of the end.
Well, at least collision is working. Always look on the bright side, brother. I like it.
These Harbingers that we see are units that can deploy, and they are not only transports, but they create Shroud in the front of the battlefield, which allows Infernal units to really regen their white health very quickly. So yeah, we see TLO, I think, barely hold this because he has the defender's advantage, of course. I think he's also going to have some flak turrets, which are exos in the sentry post. Those are very powerful. We see the Weaver kind of grab a exo over to him, get over here, and then we see hordes of reinforcing units over and over again.
Imagine if Zerg had that big area mobile creep. Imagine Undeads had an item where it can just throw blight on the ground. That would be ridiculous, right?
The flak cannons are doing a ton of damage, and I think it's just like a kind of a war of attrition where Mana's economy is just slightly better. TLO, I think, just got this base, so he didn't. His army didn't catch up as quickly, and eventually I think TLO is just going to fall.
You know, I think that this battle in particular kind of made me excited about the way we're going to see micromanagement evolve. You know, the fact that he's bringing in his own Shroud. Yeah. And then also, like with the Exos, we saw good micro, but maybe not placed perfectly against the Magmadons coming in, right? That's going to be a unit in the future we see pros really focusing on dodging the stun of.
Yeah, and...
really hope the third race clicks for me because I never was a fan of human factions. Same. When it comes to demons, I hate all the mechanics and most of the lineup. Really? I just hate the infest mechanic. I feel it's really overtuned at the moment, but in general, not that bad. I love the Magmadon charge. It's super fun. I also like that support deploy interaction here. I'm having quite a lot of fun playing the Infernals.
One thing I'm really excited about is the Lancer in particular. The
also,
Lancer has an ability that says,
if you use these brutes, especially in the early game, it's a little bit like playing whack-a-mole at the beginning, trying to hit the split button at the very early, like very last second. It's a bit of a chore, but it's also kind of fun. Didn't make my mind up yet.
Every time you attack me, I get faster and I attack faster. So maybe later on in the development of Stormgate, we see players say, oh, maybe I just don't want to attack these Lancers as much as possible, go into the back line in order to hit those juicy exos instead.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Let's go. Do you have any more clips here?
I think there's just the final clip where the game kind of ends, but that's more of like a closer I would say nothing too interesting happened here. There's a final overcharge. I think this is the Vanguard version of the scans all over the map or the mule dropping. But yeah, we see Bob overcharge. This is a final defense. TLO is trying his best with mass infantry. We see another infest, but there's just carnage all over the map as every unit falls.
Yeah, some awesome clips. I think it was a really fun series. And one thing I have to say, right, we're like very early in the closed beta, and we don't even have tier 3 here yet, but we're still having very exciting endgames.
Oh yeah, the games like. I think Mana and TLO have done a really great job of like showcasing what this game can be, and just like how the unit compositions can be very different. The back and forth with the creep camps and just the back and forth overall. Really great games. I'm excited even more for what Moon can put up against them.
Yep.
Exciting games and very.
Oh, we got a double exciting whammy. I didn't count what they said during the games, but yeah, I agree. Like, imagine Warcraft 3 without tier 3. Obviously, this is gonna be different in the end. I really like the length of a game on average. It's definitely faster than Warcraft. It feels faster than Warcraft, and I think this is what they have to aim for. It's very rarely, from my experience and also from what we've seen here, that you get a build order win when it's just over in like 3 minutes or so. That's a good thing, in my opinion. Like, not that build order wins are a good thing, that's a horrible thing, but the lack